How are you supposed to start a podcast?
I mean, all the like super official ones, they always open on like a question and then the guest dives right in.
I'm pretty sure they open with like cheesy music and shit, but
None of the good ones do.
there are good podcasts.
I mean, the ones that at least look good and get a lot of listeners.
Do they have a folding table and handhold their mics?
No,
Then why are we replicating them?
because we're better than them. We need to take what they do right and do it better, a la the folding table. That's the whole point.
I think this is an intro.
Is it?
Mm.
Sure. All right. Okay. So on this week's episode of the Theo Ben Podcast Network, we are going to be talking about Anthropic Week.
I am sorry, y'all. Believe me, I don't want to still be talking about Anthropic, but I was going to say Anthropic seems to disagree, but they seem to not want me to talk about them either. They should probably stop being shitheads then. The source code leak was fun. I hope everybody listening has heard about that already.
Yeah, that was great. I'm very, very pleased with the shitty codex fork I did of it, because as soon as that leaked, it was like, 4 in the morning or some shit like that. I just immediately downloaded it, set up a GPT 5.4 extra high run, let it go for 4-ish hours, and it got me a fully working version of Claude Code. And I haven't touched it once. I have not used it for any real work because it sucks, but I got the screenshot. It was funny.
It was very funny.
God, you were not kidding. How do you... Fuck.
It's amazing that this mic has such good characteristics when handheld, despite being entirely impossible to hold in your hand. Yeah, I think the best strat is to like between the fingers.
Like claw
Here.
it. Oh yeah. I guess I could flip. Yeah, that's
It's pretty
kind of
trash,
tolerable.
but like
Yeah, but then how the fuck am I going to touch my computer?
just talk to it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, Whisperflow's not a sponsor yet. Don't talk to it.
Well, they can't alt tab, so they can't be a sponsor. Like I can't do. Well, I guess I can do that.
I'm
then
sure
I
they'll
can
figure it
Whisperflow
out.
Everything. I hope they do. I really need them to.
Computer, use me an app.
How long was it? How far into this recording are we? How long did it take for the first dad joke to come out?
That was a Rich Harris joke.
It's still a dad joke.
I miss having a chat to appeal to. It's so nice to be able to just be like, yo, chat, am I right or am I right?
I think chat would be on my side more often. I think I could win them over.
You're not wrong. Anyways, welcome to whatever the fuck we are doing. I wanted to do a podcast, I guess, for a bit. Never been a podcast person, but the Theo Ben Podcast Network needed to start, and I've heard that TBPN isn't taken, so hopefully we can go with that. Oh, just got news that it is taken actually, and
Well, it's taken by OpenAI, actually.
that's unfortunate.
It's a good thing we're not paid by OpenAI.
Okay, so we're officially calling this the Codex podcast.
The TBPNX podcast.
Well, okay. Serious-ish for a moment. I wanted a place to talk about things, like general things, rather than just the things that I could clickbait into a title and a thumbnail, things that are interesting and fun, and also just kind of replicate the conversations that I have with Ben here offline, because I've had many a conversation where I've broken this poor kid's brain, and I figured it'd be better if we recorded them instead of just doing them privately. So I spent way too much money and kicked out my roommate to get us a spare studio, and here we are staring at 3 cameras at 11 p.m. in my apartment, pretending that we're real podcasters.
And I'm trying to figure out how to hold an SM7B. And I still can't figure it out.
Just watch some episodes of Safety Third. They figured it out pretty okay.
Yeah, I watched. I didn't like any of the ways they were doing it. It's...
I don't think they do either, to be fair.
Which maybe is the point.
Probably. I'll hit up Will in the future.
Sounds good.
2 main things we plan to do in this show are talk about things that are just generally like the news of the week type stuff. The things we cover in other videos, the things we wanted to talk about more and couldn't, and the things that we want to get each other's opinions on and maybe give each other a little bit of shit about. And the other thing we want to do is nerd snipe each other a bit, because I already do this a lot off stream, and I know Ben's been holding on to some fun nerd snipes for me for a bit now.
I have been.
I see some notes on his computer that have me kind of scared.
It's going to be very, very entertaining.
Hopefully someone's entertained. Welcome to whatever the fuck we decide to name this. Hopefully this isn't a mistake. So, speaking of mistakes, shall we talk about Anthropic? How many mistakes did they make this week?
Well, we had 4 videos recorded for it. There probably should be a 5th. So at least 4 or 5. There was the Claude Code leak. There was the subscription debacle. There was the horrific comms around all of it. A bunch of people making dumb posts about why it's really good that they made the changes they did. Is there any I'm missing?
Clarification on the terms of service around using the models and using the subscription outside of their harnesses. That was then immediately retconned because I decided to post about it. That was great.
That was very fun.
I legitimately, I know this is somewhat conceited to say, but I'm legitimately starting to feel as though some of the bad things Anthropic is doing is purely because the alternative is accepting I was right. And Anthropic would rather burn themselves to the ground than admit a single fucking time that Theo was correct.
They hate admitting they're wrong. And they also, I don't know. I half agree. I also just feel like there is a massive amount of incompetency happening here. Like, I feel like they just do not have any idea what they're actually doing with any of this, and things are just falling apart in very, very stupid ways. Like the fact that DMCAs went out to every single solitary person who forked the normal Claude Code repo, not the leaked one.
We should probably go from the top because people might be confused about what was being forked and why DMCAs were being sent out. But on the comms thing, before we do that,
yes,
I think their comm strategy was built before they had lost the positive sentiment. Like they built their way of interacting around the assumption that everybody just liked them. And even from the employees I've talked to, that's just kind of how they worked. And many of them are still in this delusion that everybody likes Anthropic and that anything that is anti-Anthropic is some paid propaganda or some temporary thing that will vanish in time. And that is just not the case. And I think that comm strategy is going to burn them to the fucking ground.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you look back at the last, year and a half, which feels like an eternity at this point, but if you go back 9 months ago, Anthropic was so far in the lead in the developer world. Everyone loved Claude Code. Everyone loved the Max Plan. Everyone loved the Claude models. OpenAI was not a serious contender for any dev mindshare at that point because they got there first, and it took OpenAI a long time to catch up. It took until... I mean, I would argue they probably caught up with 5.2 codecs, but no one really caught on until January-ish. That's when the sentiment really, really swung. I don't think that they've ever had to play from having real competition before. And then it was a horrible timing where OpenAI is being super chill and easy to work with and really pleasant. We get codex rate limits reset every, week at least?
Yep. OpenAI's strategy was clearly built around being perceived as the, harmful player, I guess. Like they went into all of their comms and their way of doing things is you can tell that they are scared of being seen negatively, so they're trying to overcorrect, which is almost never a bad strategy. I'm gonna give an example that I probably shouldn't, but fuck it, that's what the podcast is for.
Yeah,
I obviously have friends at both labs. One of those friends is somebody at OpenAI that is concerned about the optics of OpenAI. I sent them a tweet from somebody replying to me. Somebody said something along the lines of, oh, clearly Theo's paid by OpenAI. That's why he's so anti-Anthropic. And somebody else replied a really good reply along the lines of, every lab kind of sucks and does terrible things. OpenAI does fewer of them and owns them and tries their best to fix them when they're given feedback. It's not Theo's fault the other labs don't do that. That's why he has to crash out all the time. I sent this post to my friend at OpenAI, to which they responded, do you want me to go in and clarify that we're not paying you? That's not why I sent it to this friend. I sent it to this friend with the message. I feel the sentiment shift happening. I just wanted you to see this. I think it's cool that finally people are noticing that OpenAI is, for better or worse, the only lab that's listening to the feedback. And the response from this person wasn't, oh, that's awesome. It was, how can I help you prevent disastrous comms? Because they're just all in that mindset still. And as grating as that surely is for them, it has prevented all of the disasters that Anthropic is currently experiencing.
Yep. Yeah, we have come a very, very long way since the GPT-5 video last August, where the entire, that was a rough couple days. Yeah. We were both on vacation when that happened. That sucked. But we've come a long way, and genuinely it feels like OpenAI is trying their damnedest to be the good guy here. I do think that there are a lot of other labs who are trying really hard to be nice and easy to work with. Like all the Chinese labs.
Took words out of my mouth.
Yeah, they're great. They're super pleasant to work with. They're trying really, really hard. We're just in such a brutal state right now where, unfortunately, at the frontier, which is kind of the only thing that matters, that's a spicy take, I know, but I don't care about open weight models all that much because they're not that useful compared to the frontier of 5.4 and Opus. So we don't see that much about them, but they are trying.
I wish they were like 20% better, because every interaction I've had with Moonshot, every interaction I've had with ZAI, and every interaction that I've had with the Minimax team,
they're awesome.
I've had nothing but great experiences chatting with all of them, done calls with a handful of them. They care a lot, and like, yeah, sure, some of this is definitely propaganda that is being fed into our DMs, but being pleasant to work with is a very underrated benefit. I said this in the stupid show we did with Jaden a few days ago, but like, everybody thinks that I'm nice to OpenAI because I'm a paid shill or whatever. Reality is much more embarrassing. I'm nice to them because they're nice to me and they're nice to work with. Like, it's crazy how simple it is to be decent and how few companies and labs are willing to do that. On that note, we should probably go through the actual series of events that occurred over the last week that led to us being here.
Yeah.
This week started with a rate limit crunch. A lot of people started noticing that their rate limits were not going quite as far as they were used to them going when they took advantage of the subscriptions they had with the Claude models. That blew up fast. What appears to have happened is Anthropic chose to, during peak hours between 7 and 11 a.m. Pacific time, where there's a lot of people working across the United States, to reduce how far your rate limits go when you're using the subscription plans. And I can totally understand why they would do that. What I don't understand is how they would announce this the same day they made the change at 12:46, 2 hours after the rate limit change stopped being applicable. So a bunch of users just couldn't really use their subscriptions that day. And if they weren't following Clerk on Twitter, don't even know why. And they probably have to rely on Reddit and whatever other sources, because Anthropic does not post about things they're doing wrong on any official account ever. If you want to see what's going on and why you're getting less, you have to go to people like Thoric. And if you want to see why you're getting more or what new features are cool and coming, they'll surely post that on the Claude account. But you as a user cannot stay informed unless you're following Thoric and you're following people like Ben and me. It's absurd that that is the case, that if you want to know what's going on with your Claude code plan, it's much better to follow me than the official Claude account. But that's their fault. And this is one of the many things feeding into their insane, consistent, toxic cycle of not really communicating with their users.
Well, and what's even worse is watching that whole thing unfold. It at least publicly looks like they didn't even really know what happened. Like they did not understand why the rate limits were getting hit so bad, because it was really, really bad. There were a lot of people who were doing 2 prompts and then their whole usage was taken up.
That's issue number 3. We're only on issue number 1.
Fair.
Issue number 1 was the rate limit change. Issue number 2 was actually, was that 2 or 3? I think that was 2.
The order of events, I think, was the rate limit changes, the rate limit bug, then the source code leak, then what happened after that?
So the source code leak, then they posted their updates to the rate limit stuff. It was poor Lydia that had to be the one to break that news because Thoric was too depressed to keep sharing negative things.
That was a brutal one, yep.
Yeah, poor thing. And then people realizing that those rate limit collapses were going to stay. And after all of that, there was the fun announcement less than 24 hours before they would make the change that every person who used Claude code in a harness that wasn't Claude code got an email saying that within, I think it was 18 hours from that email, they would be cut off from that. And if they're using something like openclaw with their subscription, it would just stop working, which is very funny for me because I'm not necessarily a big openclaw user, but I do have it set up. It was actually still called ClaudeBot on my machine because I set it up like launch week because I really like Stipe and I think he's awesome. I only use it for backing up random media. Like when I have a YouTube video I want to save so I can access it later or put it on my NAS, I'll just send it over Telegram and get it downloaded. That was pretty much the only thing I use my Claude code sub for other than front-end work. And now it just kind of feels useless. And I was way under the usage. Like I was using 10% of what I was allocated in any given 4 or 5 hour window. But now I'm probably going to cancel that $200 a month sub, both out of principle because they're fucking assholes, but also because I'm just not really using it. It would be cheaper for me to pay API prices for the 3 things that I post, unless one of those front end loops goes slightly too long, and then suddenly I'm paying $600 for some shitty CSS.
Yeah, or if you accidentally do the /fast command thing, and then it takes $6,000 to do anything.
Well, since there's like 15 confirmations and a bunch of weird UI noise when you do that, I hope, fingers crossed, it's a little hard to do that. But if you happen to mention ultra-think in your prompt, then you'll certainly be paying the price.
God. Oh, I forgot about that one. Yep.
Yeah. So Thing one was the rate limit change that they intentionally did. Thing two was some skepticism on Reddit and other places that there might be a bug in Claude Code causing the cache to not be hit. Because fun fact, if you don't know this about how inference works, when you send tokens to a model to respond to and has to generate the next set of things that it is responding with, it needs to process all of the text before it to get to the right spot. So like effectively all of the parameters and things in the model are adjusted based on the previous history to make the next token more likely to be correct. Doing all of the computations to get to that point is not cheap. It is certainly not free. So a thing that a lot of the labs do is effectively snapshot when you're at a certain point so that you don't have to recalculate for the 15 messages prior. You can just recalculate from the message you're on down, and then you don't have to run everything in the history, and it's a lot cheaper to serve. But caching, it does cost something, and Anthropic's one of the labs that is the most proud to charge you for the caching. And also, it is very easy to break this because if anything changes in that message history, the math has to change entirely. So if you have like a system prompt that has a timestamp in it, and the timestamp changes when you do a new generation, now everything in the history is different because of the top being different, and now you lost the whole cache and you have to eat the cost accordingly. The rumor on Reddit was that Anthropic had accidentally made a change to Claude Code, causing the cache to get nuked, thereby causing you to use way more usage. But it's seeming more and more like what people were upset with was the actual genuine rate limit changes that they didn't think would be as bad as they were because Anthropic did not buy enough GPUs, and now we all have to pay for it.
So for Opus, you are $5 in, $25 out for the million input output. Then for the cache read, it's 50 cents per million read, and then $6.25 for cache write.
That's the killer.
Yep,
$6.25 for cache write. And it's also worth noting that I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong here, I'm pretty sure the only lab that charges for cache write is Anthropic.
It is. I'm looking at the GPT 5.4 one, and it is 25 cents per million input tokens read from cache, and that's it. There's no cost for writing to the cache. It just kind of happens.
Yep, and I believe OpenAI does automatic caching now when you send messages, and I know Gemini does because Gemini's caching used to be utter fucking garbage, and then our friend Logan flipped a shit about it, and they fixed it. Not even 20 minutes in, and I'm already realizing the difference between this podcast and all of the others that exist. We actually fucking use these things.
We do. A lot. Way too much, you could argue, but yes, we do.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
It is going to be very, very fun. There's a lot that we're going to get to. Speaking of things that we're using, you want to talk about the source code leak?
Oh boy.
That was a fun one.
Hey, I'm not using the source code leak. I am fully not to be held liable. There is no code. You can see most of my code because my shit's open source. There is no lines of code shared, despite the fact that in said source code leak, if you happen to search for something like open code in it, you'll find multiple comments referencing the things that they are getting ideas from.
Yes. Not just ideas, copy pasted snippets from open code.
Just realized both of my background lights are dead. That's fine.
Fuck.
I'll solve that problem later. It is what it is. We don't need them, but
yeah.
Can you tell that I threw this together?
Yeah.
Totally didn't.
8 hours later.
10 hours of my day spent on this, 4 of which were in OBS, and then I just gave up. I'm working on this since like 11 a.m.
And it's 11 p.m.
I took a brief break to bring in groceries, but that's about it. Yeah. Anyways, we should probably go over the source code leak, like how it happened and why these things happen and why they're a big deal.
Yep.
So one fun historical fact is that when Claude Code first came out, it was within their first 4 or 5, if I recall, releases on NPM, where they first accidentally leaked the source code. To go all the way back to launch, when Boris first started talking about Claude Code, he did an interview with their DevRel on their weird YouTube channel at the time. He said one of my favorite quotes that I will use to haunt him for the rest of his and Anthropic's existence. We thought it was our secret sauce, and we weren't sure if we wanted to put it out there. Like, everyone at Anthropic is using this. What if this gives our competitors an advantage? What's really funny here is that they gave their competitors an advantage by doing the shitty things that they continue to do by treating it like this magic secret sauce.
I know. And honestly, they gave their competitors an advantage because no one copied it. I've read a lot of that source code. It is an advantage that no one has been forking it and copying it and building on top of it. It is rough, to say the least.
They should have went the Google Kubernetes strategy where they open sourced it and made it look like a good standard just to force all of the competition to make really shitty stuff and never be able to compete meaningfully. Yeah. It worked great for Kubernetes. I'm sure it would have worked well for Claude Code too.
It would have. It had such an insane first move.
Is MCP one of those?
Okay.
At the time. At the time.
It's gotten better, especially since the Linux Foundation stuff happened. They're taking it in a decent direction. It has a lot of problems, but I'm sure we'll have a section where I defend MCP and you get mad at some point.
Absolutely, we will.
It'll be great.
So, back to history lesson. Anthropic kind of sees themselves as anything I say about how they see themselves will be flipped on me as though I'm the bad guy, so I won't go any further. They see themselves in a way that is special. And as such, they seem to have believed that the Claude Code source and that Claude Code as a whole was this magical thing that they needed to reserve and hold for themselves in some way, which is really silly, like absurdly silly. And as such, they refused to release the source code. There were already 3 separate open source terminal-based AI coding tools at the time. Aider was the one I was most familiar with, but there was a few others as well. And Claude Code was the first that was made by one of the labs. But it's also worth noting that when Claude Code dropped, you had to use API access for it. You could not do a subscription. For the first 4 or so months, you could not subscribe to use Claude Code. You had to have an API account as an enterprise and use that. Because Claude Code was doing better than expected and Anthropic didn't really know how to build product, if I recall, they were still contracting out the Claude.ai site at the time.
Are they still doing that? Has that been fixed?
I don't know.
I don't think the site's been fixed.
I think the desktop app is now managed internally, which I think is worse, not better for them.
I've touched it twice and neither was good.
Yeah. So because of that, my assumption was that both Boris and Kat weren't being invested in properly internally. They knew they could do something bigger with this. They wanted to do something bigger with this. They got acquired by Cursor. And when that happened, and this is where I really start getting into speculative territory. I have no inside information here. This is just my interpretation of the absurd events that I watched unfold at the time. They were only at Cursor for 2 or 3 weeks and then went back to Anthropic. And in that window, a very interesting thing happened. These subscriptions were introduced where you could pay $100 or $200 a month to get a very generous amount of Claude Code usage in the terminal app, and it would just not have to bill your API. It was a thing that you could do on a personal account. You'd pay $100 or $200 for the max 5 or 20x, whatever they call it, and then you could use Claude Code without having to pay the absurd API prices. And it was found that they were actually subsidizing inference through this by quite a bit, as much as like 5 to 10x. That has since went up to 20x plus, but at the time it was still absurd. And this caused Claude Code usage to spike massively. So now imagine that you're Boris and Kat, who made this thing, cared a lot about this thing. I would argue cared way too much about this thing. You moved to a different company because you didn't feel like Anthropic cared enough to invest in you and let you do this thing. The optics for Anthropic were terrible. They wanted to make Claude Code happen, so they decided that they would spend what was effectively marketing money to subsidize tokens, get a bunch of people on Claude Code, and brute force Boris and Kat to come back because nobody wants to see their baby suddenly sprout wings and fly weeks after they left because the company finally decided to invest in it. So Boris and Kat went back, and the rest is utter fucking chaos. My hottest take here, and we'll get to this in a bit with the rate limit stuff, is that they never should have done the subscriptions in the first place, or at the very least not subsidized them the way that they did. Mm-hmm. The only reason they did that was in order to get Boris and Kat back, and every optics disaster that's happened since stems directly from that mistake.
Yep. Everything from the shutting off open code, 2 months ago, to what's happening now, and all of the rate limit dramas of it going up and down and people being worried that, are they shadow reducing my rate limits now? And this weird opaque box that people can make conspiracy theories about. They fucked themselves. And honestly, I think that they kind of fucked the industry in a weird way, because now all of the different agent platforms, all the labs, even like the Cursors and open codes of the world, feel compelled to make their own subs to try and compete with this, because it's really, really hard to compete with someone who is offering you $5,000 for $200 versus a guy who's offering you $200 for $200. That math just doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
There's a lot of things that Theo and I disagree about, but the one thing that we do agree on is that code review just kind of sucks, especially these days when agents are putting up dozens of PRs every single day. It makes it really hard to keep on top of it, read every single line of code. It's just not feasible anymore, unless you have something like today's sponsor, Coderabbit. They're an incredible code review platform that deeply understands your code base. And don't just take my word for it. Take a look at this PR on the Expo repo, where Expo was pretty hesitant to bring in an AI code reviewer. They didn't think it'd be that helpful helpful or it would even really understand their code base all that well. So they tagged it in because anytime you're in a PR, you can just tag at coderabbit.ai and ask it literally anything and it will answer. And they asked it to analyze the code base to figure out how tree shaking in Metro actually works. And the answer they gave it was so good that Expo is now a very happy Coderabbit customer, alongside 15,000 others, including Clerk, Bun, Indeed, and so many others. It's an incredible code review platform that's not just for your PRs on GitHub, because they just introduced an incredible new CLI tool that makes it that you can get Coderabbit's really good reviews on your machine without having to push it up to GitHub. All you have to do to get your changes reviewed is type CR into the terminal. It'll do the review, which is incredibly helpful on its own, but this is even more helpful when you have agents working in your code base. They have a Claude Code integration that makes it so that as your agent is making changes, once it's done, it can automatically trigger the review itself to find any issues that were made during those changes, get those addressed before it even goes up to GitHub. You no longer have to push everything up, wait for the review to happen, grab the changes from GitHub, grab the review comments from GitHub, pull them back down. That whole process was kind of tedious. They're doing incredible work here to close that loop and make it so that code review is something that just naturally happens in the background, so that by the time you do actually look at the PR on GitHub, it's already gone through multiple layers of review and is going to be of much, much higher quality. And it's not just for Claude Code. They have integrations with Cursor, Codex, Gemini, and the fact that it's just a CLI means that any coding agent can comfortably call it whenever they need to. You can make these incredible autonomous loops that's going to result in much better code coming out of these agents. And considering it's 2 clicks to install with a 14-day free trial, there is no reason not to try it at nerdsnipe.link/Coderabbit.
Okay, back to source maps before I get distracted by the rate limit thing. So that was all a while ago. Since then, the Claude Code team has expanded massively. Last I heard, it was over 80 people. It might be even more at this point. It's a big team, lots of people on it doing lots of different things. Claude Code is blown up, as we've all seen. It's even giving people psychosis, even billionaires, which is hilarious.
No comment.
Claude Code is still closed source. It is on NPM. You can install it other ways. It is bundled with Bun. It is a package of JavaScript. And this is an important detail because JavaScript is not a language that is compiled. It can be built because we don't write JavaScript in a way you run it. We usually write TypeScript to include all these other tools and things. And when we do that, we have to have a bundler step that takes all of the things we imported, all the stuff we built, trims out all the things that aren't actually JavaScript, like our type definitions, our rules, and all those things we use to make sure our code is accurate. And then it minifies it and makes it this bundled up nonsense that is really hard to parse or change, but still works and runs in JavaScript runtimes. And then that is what's sent to the user. Technically speaking, there is code that can kind of be read whenever you run any application written in JavaScript. How hard that code is to read and reuse and do things with varies based on what tools they use to build it, how much they're trying to hide and obfuscate, and all of these other things. And Anthropic has tried very hard to hide those things. There is a problem with these strategies, though. How do you deal with errors? When I work on code on my machine and I have an error, it will tell me in my terminal what line of code caused that error, and I can go into my editor and see that code and make the change and fix it. But once the code ships, since it doesn't have the same lines of code because everything's been flattened and messed up into this nonsense uglified thing, you can no longer trace back to where the error happened and get the original thing in your source code. So how do we map from the thing that we bundled to the original source? We use a thing called a source map. Source maps are effectively the binding between your source code and the thing that gets sent to the user, so that when an error happens, you're able to use your source map, ideally on your own servers, to link between the error the user saw and the actual code, so you can go make a fix and actually ship the thing. But there are some problems here. Specifically, if you accidentally include the source map in your package, you're effectively just handing out the source. This is something that is not too hard to do because when you publish a package to NPM, it is effectively just taking the folder where your code is and where you have this build that you're planning on shipping, and it grabs all of that and then ships it up. If you have any semblance of a decent process here, it is pretty easy to prevent any issues because you have just the source code on the server. You have a build command that runs, puts all of the things in, and then ships it. Do you know, actually, Ben, why this leak happened? Like what the actual issue was that caused this to go out like that?
No idea.
You didn't? I'm so excited we get to get your reaction to this on film.
Okay.
They didn't have a CI step for publishing. Every single publication of Claude Code has been run on one of the team's machines since day one.
What?
Yeah. And different people every time.
Okay, this makes a lot more sense. Continue.
Can we take a moment to appreciate that? Just for context for people who aren't as in the dev world, because I know for some reason podcasters don't code as much. It is what it is. When you want to put out code, usually the first step is you put it on GitHub, and then your team reviews the code, accepts it, and then merges the code. And when you want to release it, you can trigger a release. Usually what that means is on GitHub or a platform like it, you have the code get downloaded on a server, it runs all of your checks, it runs the build, it makes sure everything is good, and then it sends it up to NPM or wherever else so that users can use it. If you are less competent, you might just run it on your own machine. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to belittle them. I'm saying this because I'm trying to belittle myself. When I make a new package, the first time on the 0.0.1 release, I will usually publish it from my machine. And then I try to put it in the GitHub action so that it will run when I click a button on GitHub instead. And when I do that, it usually breaks in all sorts of ways because actually getting things to publish on GitHub is obnoxious. And NPM has changed how to do this, I think 3 times in the last 4 years or so.
Is somewhere around that. The current system's really not that bad. It's a pain in the ass to set up, but once it's set up, it works.
Yeah. I actually have a really good agent that helps with this. His name's Julius. He's from Sweden.
Oh, I love the Julius agent.
A bit expensive monthly cost-wise, but very, very efficient. Also, weirdly, self-controlled. I don't have to prompt it even. Julius is able to just go and fix things. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he's an employee.
I know.
So usually when I have problems with my NPM publishing strategy, he'll come in and fix it. I've actually gotten a little better at fixing it myself. I even made changes to our current one. Very small, but meaningful. Usually I just let him take it over. But I want to make sure it is clear that every single thing me and my team publish do go through an actual CI publication step because it's annoying, but it's annoying in the sense that it takes half a day to a day of fighting it. It's not annoying in the sense that you have to fight it and maintain it and keep doing this forever. So why the fuck does my 3-person team have this right across 20 plus surfaces that we have to cover? And their 80-person team couldn't find one person 3 hours to go fucking figure it out, especially considering half of them used to work on things like React at Meta and know how to do this. Yeah. They're just fucking lazy because their agents aren't smart enough to do it, and they're too lazy to open the terminal up themselves and set it up.
Yeah, and it's now that you said that, I'm 99% sure what actually happened is whenever, in the package JSON, you just define what folder gets published to NPM, and they probably did a dev build to test it on their machine, and that dev build outputted source maps, and those just ended up in that build directory on that local machine, which is get ignored. So it wouldn't be a problem if it was in CI, but since they did that test build or some random shit, it just snuck in there.
No, what happens even dumber here.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. What? So I spent a lot of time in source maps throughout my career. I've had to do weird, crazy debugging at big companies, small companies, everything between. Mm-hmm. You don't have a different distribution folder in your project usually for when you are testing your source maps when you're actually publishing. So what you're supposed to do is every time you do a new build is nuke the dist folder. Yeah. If there are conflicting files like the index.js, which is the thing you're actually shipping, then it will override those. But if you don't nuke the directory first and there's source maps in said directory, they don't get deleted. So you have this folder. You did a build that included source maps at some point because you wanted to put them in Sentry or whatever. You didn't delete the folder. You do another build for the release process. It overrides the files that you actually release. It doesn't touch the files that are the source maps, but they're still there because there's no reason for them to have been deleted. Mm-hmm. And then it's published. This is very trivially solved by having an ephemeral system where it gets reset because it's running in a fresh server when you do it, which is how all of CI for all of history has worked. Mm-hmm. But that requires using your brain, not an agent.
Yeah. That is what I was trying to say for the record.
Cool. You get the idea. So Anthropic being bad at engineering resulted in the world getting to see their bad code.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't even know if this is bad engineering, just being lazy, because it is so, because I guarantee you they are having the agent run the build step. And it is so, when you are deep in agent land and you are barely looking at the code, which is what naturally happens, it is so damn easy to just have a dirty directory somewhere that you're just not paying attention to. And it doesn't show up in any tools because again, it's get ignored. It's very easy to not overwrite that.
Yep. And here we are with
subtle mistake.
You'd think if they cared so much about their secret sauce, they would care enough to make a 20-line of code build script that does this properly. But they care about the optics. They don't care about the actual thing, which kind of seems to be Anthropic's whole thing. It feels like they're very quick to jump on things and make changes when they need to GPU crunch, when they want to free up GPUs for whatever the hell they're cooking. But when it comes to problems that we are experiencing as users, we're working on it, but it's really hard. And then it keeps cycling. And this is where we transition into mistake number 4. Anthropic's utter fucking chaos where they decided to announce that anybody using their subscriptions for anything other than Claude Code can go fuck themselves just under 24 hours after this leak and under 24 hours before this would go in place.
Yep. And yeah. I honestly, I don't know. I don't know how they planned this and how they couldn't, like, how is there no one in the room who's like, hey guys, if we're going to like nuke all these things that a lot of people have entire systems built around, what if we gave them like 2 weeks heads up? Like even just like a grace week would have been really nice, but they didn't even do that. And they announced it on Friday night after working hours. So they tried to do it at the most dead time possible.
I have an idea. Let's do an exercise here. Let's embody our inner Anthropic.
Oh, yes. All right. I'm getting aligned.
I'm going to be the researcher that is pissed off that we don't have GPUs.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be the Claude Code comms person that on one hand doesn't want to get flamed on Twitter, but on the other hand is delusional enough that you think every single thing Anthropic does is out of the kindness and generosity of the heavens.
Yes.
Cool.
It's the benevolent machine god that they're building to save us all.
Hey, Boric, we're out of GPUs again. How are we supposed to make the God model
sir,
if we
I'm
don't
so
have
sorry.
if we don't have GPUs?
Sir.
You know what it is? It's those openclaw people.
Fuckers.
I know.
How could they do this? How could they steal our GPUs?
So here's what we're going to do. Okay. You're going to kick them all out and give me the GPUs.
Done.
Okay. We are assuming you care about the Twitter optics, remember? So you're a little upset about this. Remember, at Anthropic, the product people and the researchers kind of hate each other. So let's reset.
Yeah, okay. All right. My bad.
2 steps back.
But sir, what about the Twitter followers? What about the optics? What about how is this going to look to all of our paying customers? They're paying us billions a year.
Models are great. So what if we just give them $100 of API credit? If like we don't want them on the subscription plan, we'll just give them credit and then go do that, and we'll get back to just taking their GPUs.
I think we can make that work.
Right? Like who wouldn't want $100 of Anthropic credit? That's like $300 of gold.
That's a gift,
right?
It's a gift.
Like we should be charging $1,000 for that much inference.
We really should be.
Yeah.
Frankly, the price is going down is concerning.
What we should do is relabel the models so that Opus is now Sonnet, and then we can make something even bigger and more expensive.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, we aren't supposed to leak that part.
No.
Yeah, nobody's watching, right?
No.
Okay. So what actually happened here is they probably genuinely believed internally that the $20 to $200 of credit you get based on your subscription was enough to cover their bullshit and let them get away with this, because they just so fundamentally don't understand the optics of somebody who doesn't work at Anthropic and isn't drunk on the Kool-Aid. They just cannot see it. And I know this because I talk to these people. I have more friends at Anthropic than I do at OpenAI. But when I talk to an Anthropic friend about a thing that Anthropic's doing wrong, the response is them trying to convince me that Anthropic is holier than thou, and I just don't understand their perspective. I'm sorry that I don't sympathize properly with a $300 to $800 billion company, but maybe if they bought the right number of fucking GPUs, none of this would be my problem.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that I have to be the one out here talking shit, but somebody has to hold them accountable. And I'm thankful that their reputation has finally caught up to what I have been saying, and I no longer get shit for explaining how shitty they are.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
I really wish they weren't like this, genuinely. There's some really special stuff in the Claude models. They are actually very nice to talk to, and there's some really cool shit they're doing. We need more competition. I just wish that their heads were not so far up their ass.
Speaking of which, let's talk about the most head up, the most ass, in my opinion, about all of this.
Oh, yes.
Boris was the poor guy who was stuck with the task of telling people publicly on Twitter that this change was happening. Because again, remember, Anthropic will never announce anything negative on their official socials with the orange logo. They will only ever do that over a very limited set of emails that sound kinder than they are, and through the accounts of the people who work on the thing, because the employees are stuck explaining this. Not even the employees who do comms, just random people on the team, and the official accounts are reserved for things that people like.
Yep.
So poor Boris was the one stuck with explaining this publicly to people. And there's another thing that a lot of us have an issue with Claude. I personally am invested in this one, so I'll go on this rant really quick. They subsidize the shit out of tokens when you use Claude Code subscriptions with Claude Code. You spend up to $200 a month and get up to $5,000 a month in inference. The problem with this is that if you're not using a subscription, you don't get subsidized. So if I'm just paying API prices, I would have to spend the $5,000 to get $5,000 of inference. So a lot of people want to use those subscriptions in other tools, things like OpenCode or Pi or openclaw or any of these other things. but you can't because Anthropic only wants to subsidize their own tools. I will steelman this for a second and say that Claude Code being controlled fully by them means that they can do a lot of optimizations, like they can be careful about how it does things in parallel. They can go out of their way to make the caching work better. They do all these things to reduce the cost to them when you use it. But if you choose to not use their tool, you have to go spend significantly more money as your punishment for not using their lackluster. I believe in the official rankings using Opus with Claude Code, not only is it not in the top 3 harnesses for performance with Opus, it's not even in the top 10. It's currently in 12th place. If you use Opus with literally any other harness, it will write better code. Like Claude Code, and to be fair, probably some of the optimizations they've made here make the model perform worse and it makes it dumber. That said, they have built their economics around the assumption they have a little more control in Claude Code. So steelmanning to the best of my ability, the amount of inference they give you is not sustainable in other places because they also suck at tracking these things. So they're not holding people to their limits properly. And instead of fixing this, they've decided to just kick anybody out that isn't using the official tool. To Boris's credit, he's also filed pull requests on things like openclaw in order to reduce the cache misses and make it less token hungry when using Claude models. But that's far from enough, especially when they at the same time come out and ban Claude models through the Claude Code subscriptions from being used in tools like openclaw. But what if you decide to actually use Claude Code underneath? What if you have, let's say, an open source user interface that is significantly faster, more performant, more featureful, way easier to use, open source, and just a much better experience? But since the creators of this thing, let's just call it a T3 code, I don't know.
It's actually T1 code.
Oh,
that's the official version.
How far do we get in before the first Maria mention? 46 minutes? Cool.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all. It would be really nice if we could use a good harness in that situation, but if we want people to be able to use their expensive subs that get you even more expensive inference, we are kind of backed into a corner and have to just wrap this closed source, poorly documented, often failing in obscure ways and super RAM hungry harness that they gave us with Claude Code. And as such, we are now suffering. We have done our best and we have implemented Claude Code in T3 code. So if you have a subscription, we are, as far as we know, fully above board and good. But as far as we know, is doing some heavy lifting. Well, it was. But one of the nice things, one of the very few nice things that came out of all of this and came from Boris being on firefighting duty is a reply he had to an Eric Barres. Eric asked, subs can still be used for personal local tools that use or wrap the Claude harness, like Claude Code and Claude Code Headless, as well as Agents SDK, right? To which Boris replied, yep, working on improving clarity here to make it more explicit. This seems like a very, very clear, yes, you are now allowed officially, like relatively clearly, to use custom wrappers for Claude Code and Agent SDK with your subscriptions for local use at the very least. This seems pretty cut and dry, totally fine. So I very excitedly took this screenshot and posted, one piece of good news, T3 code is confirmed safe for Claude subs. We finally have explicit confirmation that tools wrapping Claude Code for local use are allowed. I made this post because I had been DM'd by multiple different people and also saw the post and was excited because there is effectively no reading you can possibly do of what Boris said here that can be interpreted in any way other than, yes, you can use these things locally with wrappers like T3 code.
And yet that's probably not going to be the case.
Would you like to read Thoric's reply?
Oh God, let me pull it up. To be clear, this is not guidance or an update on the Agent SDK. We're still working on clarity there, which probably means that, well, actually, I want to go over to a Matt Pocock tweet because I think this one very nicely sums up the weird issue we're having on the where is the line with this thing, because using your Claude Code sub in Claude Code is fine. On the online platform, it's fine. Using it in personal software is okay, probably, but using it in commercial software is not okay. But what if that commercial software is open source software that's free that you can just download on your machine and can run it? What my personal guess here is if you're using it for like some super basic task that barely uses any tokens, they just won't notice and you'll be okay. But for anything that is an actual agent loop, like if you're using it to generate code, they're probably going to nuke it. That is my guess. I think we'd both agree that the best auth experience either of us have ever had is Clerk. It is so damn easy to get it set up in literally any project. Next.js, React, even my Svelte nonsense works beautifully with Clerk. Getting a sign in with GitHub button on there is just trivial to do, but they do so much more than that. Their dashboard is incredible. The components make life so much easier. The fact that you just bring in their sign in component, mount it on the page, and it just kind of works is frankly incredible. And that's not even talking about the fact that they actually have the best organization system of any auth provider I've tried. There are a lot of other auth providers out there, and none of them handle orgs the way Clerk does. It is so seamless. All you have to do is mount the org component, set in the dashboard that orgs are turned on. It is trivial to get a really great B2B experience set up from scratch. Stack on top of that the fact that Clerk billing now exists, so all you have to do to get payments set up is turn it on, integrate the pricing table component into your app, and you have a full checkout experience hooked up with the user subscription now attached to their auth object, what makes it trivial to actually gate different features and handle all of the annoying, awful edge cases of billing. I honestly don't know how to put it other than Clerk just kind of gets it. The fact that whenever I look at their SDKs, when you look at their raw JS SDK, it is trivial to implement in a normal HTML page with a script tag, or you can put that in a Svelte component and easily mount that directly to the DOM. Or if you want to work in React, you can use the React components, which are built on top of their raw JS components because the whole thing is beautifully, intelligently designed. It is the auth provider that just works. I have fought every single auth provider except for Clerk. It is an incredible experience every single time, and you will not regret using it at nerdsnipe.link/Clerk.
I want to qualify Matt here, who hopefully is in between us on the screen right now. Matt Pocock is one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life. I would put him next to like Kelsey Dodds in the dev world for just absurd levels of kindness. It was so much so that when we first started interacting, because we were both the TypeScript guys on YouTube, there was a while where he didn't know how much he should interact with me because I am not the nicest guy on Twitter. He eventually came around when he realized that my intent was good and that I was just fighting for the things that we mutually cared about and mattered, that trying to push the technologies we care about forward. But it took him a bit because, again, he cares so much about kindness and being a moral, good acting human that the way I interact was scary to him. Like, that's the type of nice guy he is. He's the type of nice guy that is scared to talk to Theo publicly. Now we're good. I also had to be a bit less of a dick in general, and I'm proud of the progress we've made here. So with that qualification, I would like to emphasize how rare it is for Matt to do anything other than be really nice in his glazing of the things that he enjoys. I have almost never once in my life seen him say anything even vaguely negative, which is why when he first had questions about how we can wrap and use your Claude Code subs, he was super kind and generous with it. I don't care enough to find the tweet to put it there. But what Matt said at the time was something along the lines of, I am still confused as to whether or not I can do this. I'm working on a course that uses Claude Code. I want to wrap it with some things. Is this allowed or not? To which Thoric replied, sorry, we haven't clarified this. We're working on it. We'll have an update soon. To which Matt replied 3 weeks later, any ETA on this? No response. It has now been another 3 weeks. We have now had even more drama. We have now had this change that got sent to us over email into Boris Post, and then a reply that seemed like we were allowed to do this. And now we're getting more pushback that we might not be able to do this. And this has broken even poor Matt, the kindest, most thorough British TypeScript developer I've ever met in my life, who, reminder, just put out a course 2 to 3 days ago that you should check out, by the way. He's a good friend. He deserves money. Not a paid endorsement of any way, shape, or form. Just Matt deserves the money for the things he does because he makes really, really good educational materials. He built the whole fucking thing around Claude Code. I don't know if you know that, but literally the entire course, top to bottom, does not work if you're not using Claude Code.
Yep.
It is probably going to sell millions of dollars of subs.
Probably.
And he still doesn't fucking know if he's allowed to do it or not.
Yep. There's a line in his post. I have never before experienced from any developer tool such a frustrating lack of clarity over the basic terms of usage. Because there is no clarity here. Frankly, my personal guess is that they regret the Claude Agent SDK thing. I think that is just going to bite them in the ass in a lot of ways. There is no world where they want you to build an agent on top of it because it is not theirs and it is not controlled by them. I assume what their intent with that was to allow you to do like automations within a PR or something like that, like some one-off generations on your computer, like little cool ways you could hook into it without building a full competitor on top of it. But now that this thing exists, where the fuck is the line? What are you allowed to do with this? We'll see.
I'm going to make yet another mistake. I have a feeling that this podcast is going to be full of these things I'm going to regret. I'm going to tell you about a text that I haven't even shown you yet that I got from an Anthropic employee that I will not say by name.
Oh, we're going to get in so much trouble for this.
I don't fucking care. I'm pissed. I shit you not. A text I got earlier today from an Anthropic employee was, I feel like you guys don't appreciate the complexity of the problem. Effectively, that individual's response to Matt's post saying that he's never before experienced from any dev tool such a frustrating lack of clarity. We are the ones who don't understand the complexity of the problem here, Ben. Did you know that? That we don't appreciate the complexity of Anthropic's hundreds of billions of dollars poorly spent on shit PR and worse harnesses?
Well, to be honest, I feel like I kind of do understand what the complexity is. They just do not have enough compute to satisfy the demand. So they're trying to figure out a way to not have the max plan used all that much. The only place they want it to be used is in Claude Code. And they now have this gun pointed at them that they pointed at themselves called the Agent SDK that they now have to reckon with. And they're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
They seem totally okay with subsidizing themselves to hell and back as long as you are using their tool.
Yes.
But we need to be clear. The 5x and 20x max plans for Claude Code from Anthropic are marketing spend.
Yes.
So if you are not using their tool, they are not interested in giving you that discount. I've seen all sorts of funny conspiracies, like the reason that they do this is because they want to collect all the data from the people on the sub, and the data is not as good if you use other tools.
Oh, that's a fun one. Yeah.
And why would they ever allow you to use those other tools? That's just a free advantage to their biggest competitor, OpenAI. And if some startups have to die in the process, that's a sad side effect of what they're doing, which is so funny because the literal only company that benefits at all from this, the literal only one, is our friends over at OpenAI.
It is.
They have just handed them layup after layup. Every time Anthropic does something shitty, OpenAI comes in to take the free sentiment up from the ground. They are buying sentiment at 50% off at the discount store that Anthropic keeps bringing in and selling for nothing, apparently.
Yeah. No, OpenAI figured out a god tier strategy to win the AI race.
Don't be shit.
Or even just sit there and do nothing. Just sit there and watch as your competitors shoot themselves. Fucking what? We've got Grok burning itself to the ground. Llama is on fire. Google is Google. They have a bunch of geniuses siloed away who can't talk to each other so that we can get a really smart model that can't call tools. The Chinese labs are just naturally 6 to 12 months behind eternally. And then OpenAI is just sitting there watching them all fall apart and laughing as they rake in the free wins.
What's funny is they're not actually laughing. For all you'll talk to at OpenAI, they're still stressed about this. They're still going hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just working.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful strategy.
I can't believe we ended up here.
If you had asked me a year ago where we would be, this is not what I would have predicted. I loved Anthropic stuff 6 months ago. Like I remember when you were first getting suspect on Anthropic, I kind of disagreed. Like I was a big Claude guy last fall. I have videos on my channel of me talking about how much I think it was like Sonnet 4 or 5 at the time, something like that. I loved that model. It was so much fun.
It would have been Sonnet 4 6 months ago, probably, but
yeah, Sonnet 4, whatever it was. I had a really good time with it. It was a great model, but they just keep getting worse. I don't know. It sucks. We're going to lose the only real competitor OpenAI has, which sucks. I have enough faith in them, and from everyone I know, I think that we should be okay. But I am genuinely scared of the day when OpenAI does not have any real competition and they can just do whatever they want. I don't want to live in that world. I want Anthropic to do well. I am rooting for them. I don't like that they're doing this shit.
Fun realization I just had. In the week where Anthropic made more mistakes than ever, shipped more bugs than ever, and had more issues with the rate limiting than ever, Codex reset the rate limits twice.
They did.
And you can guess how many times Anthropic did.
Yeah, never. They never would. And like, I think this is also a weird thing too, which is how the models turned out from both of these companies. The GPT models are so much cheaper to run than the Anthropic models that they can get away with doing stuff like that.
They're cheaper, they're smarter, they can be reset. They have enough compute to do all of these things, and they're actually pleasant to interact with. And at the core of the things they built with the Codex app server, it's open source. The CLI with Codex is open source. The app isn't, but there's a better app called T3 Code. Check it out.
There is.
Codes. That is open source, that is built on top of the app server, because again, all of the pieces we need to rebuild the Codex app are open source.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I personally had many conversations with the people working on the Codex app about open sourcing it, both publicly and privately. They're cool to talk about it. They are legitimately thinking about it. They are taking feedback. They are listening. They are learning. Versus another company where when I explain things to them, they don't learn. They try to convince me I am wrong as the person explaining the optics. I can't be wrong about the optics. I'm describing what I'm fucking seeing.
Yes. And it's a weird game that, I don't know, it truly is the cult thing. Like I genuinely just believe that it is they believe that they will save the world type thing. And that that rots your brain to such a horrific degree that anything becomes excusable. Like once you get to the point where like the whole world dies if we lose, you will do anything you can to win. And they believe that this is what they have to do to win. And probably behind the scenes, it might be. Like, I don't know what their financials are. I don't know what infra they have, what they're looking at. Like, I remember that it was the Dario interview on Dwarkesh, listening to him talk about the economics of scaling up Claude over the last couple of years and into the future. Every single year, they have to spend 10x more to get the next big model. The last model recoups its money. But still, if you make $1 billion off of your $1 billion model, but then you have to train a $10 billion model, you're kind of fucked. And he's very scared of that scaling up and making sure that they can keep up with the economics of all this stuff. And this is what's happening.
So he declined to buy the compute. Meanwhile, when OpenAI is asked how much compute do you want, they say all of it.
Yes, literally all of it. They don't give a shit. And they were right for it.
Have we exhausted this topic?
I think we beat the dead horse. I'm sure there will be more in the future, but I don't know.
In the panicked moment that Anthropic had during the Claude Code source leak, which, reminder, was caused entirely by them. This was not some malicious actor going in and stealing the code and publishing it. They distributed it themselves on NPM. NPM has some very strict policies around package publication and, most importantly, unpublication. Because if you publish a package and I publish a package that is building on top of yours, so you have something that's on version 1 and I use it in my thing that's version 1, and then your thing goes away, people can't install my thing anymore because it relies on your thing. As such, NPM has a very strict policy around unpublishing where you just can't do it unless you go the copyright route. So not only did Anthropic copyright strike NPM to get their own package taken down, which is hilarious in and of itself, they also went after every single individual developer who did the same thing, but also then went and shared the thing that, again, Anthropic published publicly. They were taking a public thing that Anthropic put out and was out for over 18 hours on NPM, where anybody could go to a publicly accessible URL and look at it. They took this and they put it on GitHub because they wanted it to be easier to look at than having to download the zip and open it themselves. I can hear the argument for that being a copyright infringement and needing to be taken down. I think that is, while dumb and gross, at the very least, that is legal.
Yes.
What isn't legal is false Digital Millennium Copyright Act strikes, which is when you knowingly send a copyright strike to an individual who has not violated any copyright, or the strike that you are issuing is not for a copyright violation. If I violate copyright in place A and you send me a strike for place B where I didn't, that is still illegal. Very important to understand here.
Yep.
I happen to have done a lot of work on copyright law when I was in college. I have written and contributed to research on this. It's a fun topic for me. I've been deep in it. I've fought Microsoft way back about all this. I care about these things a lot. And I really care about the Digital Millennium Copyright Act being used as written and intended legally.
Yes.
Which is why when I woke up on April 1st, April Fool's Day, to a message from my executive assistant telling me that there was an email in my inbox that I had gotten a copyright strike from Anthropic on GitHub, and she was wondering if this was me trying to bait them or something, because that's a thing I do.
Yeah.
When I hadn't. The copyright strike is because I had filed a one line of code change to the public Claude Code repo. Again, not the one with the source code. The public Claude Code repo is where they put the markdown for like the README on how to use it. It's where they put the skills, the plugins, and it's where they have issues for people who have problems so they can have a conversation there. The Claude Code source code is not in the Claude Code GitHub. The Claude Code GitHub had a lot of PRs open where people were trying to add the source code from the source code, which is very funny. Like, very good joke. I am proud of every person who did that. That is actually hilarious. My fork of the Claude Code repo was to make a one-line change to the front-end skill because they have this awful call-out for a retro-futuristic design that just is a slot factory.
Yes,
and I was actually genuinely trying to help them by removing this to make it so that the model would make better front ends. The PR was never touched. It is what it is. I don't expect them to accept anything that Theo contributes. I get where they're coming from. Hell. That one-line change, forked from a legitimate repository, was DMCA'd. So my fork of the official repo, where I made a one-line change, caused me to get my first ever DMCA strike on GitHub, which, when I think about it, makes sense because there is no company in history that has sent more DMCA requests to different repos on GitHub than Anthropic.
Yep.
They are the single most prolific copyright striker in the history of GitHub, which is why GitHub didn't even bat an eye when the report they received told them to ban 8.1 thousand repositories.
And I think the thing about all of this too, that's just like, it's kind of a side effect of it. I think this entire saga is just the sloppiness at play right now, where, you know, I love these coding agents to death. I do a lot of stuff with them. I write the vast majority of my code with them, and I get it. It's easy to just fall into the trap of letting the agent do everything. And I would bet money that the agent handled doing all these DMCAs and finding all the repos and sending them out.
I am 50-50 as to whether this is GitHub's fault or Anthropic's fault that I specifically got DMCA'd. First and foremost, I know for a fact Anthropic would never choose to DMCA me, because whatever they get out of the DMCA is way less than the hit they have to take for me doing content about it. That video went viral as fuck across all platforms. It was great. It was one of the best birthday presents I got this year. So thank you for the DMCA notification, Anthropic. The thumbnail for the video was just a screenshot of the email. You handed me a free layup. It was great. And I spent half the video kind of defending them because I don't know if it's their fault or not. My theory I would put this at like 70% confidence what happened. They sent a long report to GitHub about the repos they knew were violations. And there was one in particular that was forked a shitload. So they said, ban this and all of the forks. Also, look through the pull requests here where there's dozens of people trying to file pull requests to the official Claude Code repo, adding the source. All of these should be DMCA'd as well, which means they probably left the link to the pull request for the official Claude Code repo in the report. And when GitHub went to honor it, they saw that link, they saw ban forks, and they put the 2 and 2 together and banned all of the forks of the wrong repo.
It's something along those lines, most likely. I don't know how DMCAing works. I've never done it.
You send an email with links and you trust them to take down the right links.
Can you just tell them, okay, kill everything that looks like this? Like, don't they have to at least give them specific links?
Yeah, but also like some of the most schizophrenic things I have seen in my inbox are people trying to send copyright DMCA requests to my videos randomly on YouTube. You can just go back and forth with the holder of the like the publisher for months. And what's really funny is if the DMCA strike is honored, all of those comms have to be forwarded to the affected users, which didn't necessarily happen here, which I actually think now that I think about it is another violation of the law that I should hit up my GitHub contacts about. It is also worth noting, this is a very important detail, GitHub has not had their DMCA process stress tested. I am almost positive the DMCA GitHub email is some guy who once or twice a week has to go through it, figure out what is and isn't valid, and then go remove them. I don't think it's an agent. I think it's some poor underpaid individual that has to do just this, or it's just one of their 5 jobs at GitHub. This whole process is not a system. And a lot of people are looking for like, oh, here are the steps. There's no fucking steps. There's no fucking system. You send an email and you hope they do the right thing.
Yeah.
Someone did the wrong thing. It could be that the email linked the wrong stuff. It could be that GitHub hit the wrong repos. It could be that they spawned and hit all the forks from the Anthropic Claude code and not the malicious Claude code that they were upset about. It doesn't really fucking matter though, because I was illegally struck.
Yep.
And I got free content out of it. They did reverse it, which also means Anthropic is now the single company to have reversed the most DMCA strikes in the history of GitHub as well. So congratulations, Anthropic, breaking records left and right. Notably, not records for coding models, not records for usability of models, not benchmarks, as they haven't broken those for a while. But yeah, they broke the record for GitHub DMCAs. The Metallica of the AI world.
You're not wrong. Oh, Anthropic. Yeah, my guess, it was an email with a fuckload of links, and that fuckload of links from Anthropic came from them just doing some scraping process or some whatever, and there were so many thousands of links that it wasn't checked.
I would be very, very surprised if my GitHub URL was in the email.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I don't think that they had t3.gg/Claude code. I think they had Anthropic/Claude code/polls. It said, go through here and ban all the ones adding the source code. And they missed the adding the source code part, and they just banned every fork that was in there. I think every open PR on the Anthropic Claude code GitHub was hit, is my guess.
I would love to know that.
If only this company was competent enough to share details instead of just vaguely telling me it's not their fault. And this is the problem. I will continue to give them shit as though it is their fault because they have not given me the resources I need to know if it is or not.
And to be clear, I think it is their fault. I think that Anthropic put your link in there. Personally, I think that's what happened. And then that just got on the list and they just went down the list and did it. And Anthropic didn't review the list of links that they sent because they just grabbed all of them because there were so fucking many of them. And that's how it slipped through. Like if they were manually auditing them, they wouldn't have done that one.
Anthropic, I'm trying to defend you guys. I'm under an NDA. I'll gladly sign more. If you want to show me the specific email that was sent to GitHub over this DMCA that struck me personally so I can know whether or not you included me and who the party at fault is here, I would love to see that and finally be able to issue a corrected statement about what the fuck went wrong here. But I can't. You don't give me what I need to defend you, but you give me lots of things to tear you to shreds. I just want to report what's going on. And I can't do that when you hide the things that I could use to defend you and you rub in my face the things that you do fucking wrong.
Yeah, and the thing about this too is I know how it works on YouTube where DMCA strikes can be a very, very big problem if they actually go through. If you got falsely hit, how many others got falsely hit? Like, that's the even scarier thing here, where like
8.1 thousand is the number.
Yeah, and some of those I'm sure were valid. Some of them
No, the 8.1 thousand were all invalid. There was about 150 that were valid. 8.1K were invalid. 80x the valid ones to invalid.
Yeah, what the actual fuck? Then like that is like, is there a thing on GitHub where if you get 3 DMCA strikes, you fucking lose your GitHub account?
No, there isn't. And there's actually a thing I probably should have called out. I am particularly sensitive to false copyright flags because, as Ben just said, if you get 3 of them on YouTube, you lose your income for life. If you get 1 of them, your ability to process and publish videos gets harmed massively. My checks when I put up a new hour-long video on YouTube, before I go public, I just upload it to YouTube to make it public. Most of the time, that takes 5 to 15 minutes to process. But if I've recently had any copyright issue whatsoever, suddenly those take 2 to 4 hours to process before I can go live with them, which sucks. And usually this happens, funny enough, the last 2 times it happened was because of Anthropic, because I watched one of Anthropic's videos sharing a new product when I was live streaming on YouTube. And when I did that, they had a copywritten song in the ad, and the act of watching the ad on stream, hearing the music for 5 seconds saying that's probably copywritten and muting it. The 5 seconds is all it took for me to have to now wait 2 to 4 hours every time I publish a video for about a month.
Which like actually matters. That can genuinely, on breaking news stuff, that matters.
Yep. So again, I have trauma around DMCA strikes because even one of them is enough to fuck me over. Even if I win the dispute, and I've won every single fucking dispute. I've had many a DMCA strike filed on me. Thankfully, never 2 at once because that could really fuck me. But every time one is filed, I fight it and I win because fuck you, I don't violate copyright laws. So when Anthropic, who has caused me these problems in the past, not because they issue the DMCAs, but because they suck at copyright, thereby causing me to get hit with DMCAs.
Yes.
I have fought and won every time. I have had to wait still for my channel to be put back in the safe harbor every time. I fucking hate it. I get very stressed out when I get copyright strikes now across any of my platforms because they affect my livelihood. So for Anthropic to just not care, fuck me over, and then say, well, might be GitHub's fault, and not give me what I need to know. It's like, you fuckers, this costs me my livelihood. Maybe not in the case of GitHub. I don't know if you get banned if it happens enough time on GitHub. God, if my GitHub got banned, that would be really bad. But like,
it would be.
Regardless, the fuck, the actual fuck. If I had published this via Google Drive and they hit that instead, and my Google account got banned,
yeah, it's over.
Yeah, I'd have to lay off 8 people.
Yeah, we are so fucked. We lose the workspace. It's over.
To be fair, if I have it my way, I'll have to lay off 80. So
yeah. I would never publicly wish for that.
And now, with all of that aside, can we talk about the project written by like 3 people that should hopefully get those 80 laid off?
Oh, which one?
Pi.
Oh, yes, Pi. Okay. I think
you have a transition, I believe.
I do have a beautiful transition because when the source code got leaked, the first thing I did is I loaded that into T3 code. I booted up 5.4 on extra high reasoning, and I told it to make a usable version of this because all it was the source directory. So you couldn't run it right out of the box. There were a bunch of internal dependencies from the monorepo missing. It wasn't usable, but 5.4 is a very good model, and it was able to make it usable pretty quickly. I think it took a couple hours. I woke up, started dicking around with it. The first thing I did was run Doom in it because, why not? I mean, someone's got to try it. But then the other thing that I did is I turned the entire thing blue, and I got codecs running inside of Claude Code. I did a couple of test generations with it. They were all 5.4 front end slop garbage because that model cannot write front end to save its life. But when I tried it for actual work stuff, it was genuinely worse. And this is why I want to talk about different coding agent harnesses, because one of the things you'll notice if you go through the Claude Code source code is that there's so much shit getting sent up to the API on every single request. The tool calls have paragraphs on paragraphs of information for every single one. And there's a fuckload of tools in there. There's a huge system prompt. There are tons of guidelines in there. It is like, I don't know the exact number, but it's tens of thousands of tokens just to send hello there. Like people who are getting hit by the rate limits, they're sending like testing to Claude Code, and it will take their $20 a month usage down by like 5 to 10% just off one prompt because the harness is poorly made. And that is why I've gone down the rabbit hole of a lot of other different coding agent harnesses. My current favorite one that is nerd snipe me very hard is Pi, because if you look at Pi, it is a very different philosophy. Claude Code has all this crazy stuff built into it. It's got its crazy everything. But Pi is 4 tool calls built in. I think it's like a read, a write, an exec, and one other that I'm forgetting. But like
2 of the 3 are redundant.
The read tool is not redundant, actually. I think the read and write are both good to have because especially grabbing like a subsection of a file, writing the commands for that is kind of not the most ergonomic thing in the world. And it's more accurate if you can just give it a line, a start line, an end line, and a file name. That is better for the agent. That's the reason why they provide those tools to it. But still, the point is it's 4 tools. The system prompt is like 20 something lines long. It's literally like, hey, you're a coding agent. You have these tools. They do what they obviously do. Have fun. And it works beautifully. It is so good right out of the box. And the website for it is, I think it's like shittycodingagent.ai or something like that. I forget the exact link for the Pi website or whatever. And the reason is because right out of the box, it is kind of shitty. There is nothing included in it. But the way they built it is really fucking cool because when you send a prompt to Pi, one of the few things they have in the system prompt is that the path to the Pi installation on your computer, which includes the full source code for Pi. So if you want to customize it, you just tell the Pi to customize itself. And they have a /reload command in there, which will just instantly reload it with your changes. The extension system is absurdly powerful. Like earlier while we were setting up, I wanted to switch the theming on my Pi instance, and I just gave it a link to the JSON for the theme that I like within my cursor and VS Code instance. I'm like, hey, can you make me a custom theme in the Pi directory for this? It figured out how to do all of it. It just did the thing. I did /reload, and now I have a nicely customized Pi instance. And every single thing I wanted to try inside of this thing, it can just tell me how to do it. I don't have to read any documentation. It's a self-healing agent. It's fucking sick.
Isn't this like a small open source project with a few people? How can they afford to pay you to shield this hard?
They're not paying me to shield this hard.
Sponsored by Pi.
Yeah, Pi cannot afford to sponsor us. I don't know how they make money. I don't think that they do make money. Although they did, openclaw is built around it, but I don't know if they got any of the OpenAI money. I don't think they did.
Almost certainly not. Maybe they get free inference at least for an open source project.
Oh yeah, true. The free fucking $200 a month codex, which is, I am glad that they're doing a lot of that. Basically, every single open source person that I know of has gotten that, which is great. That's another fun thing that OpenAI is doing that Anthropic's not doing, is they're very generous, which is giving that to anyone who can potentially do something cool with codex. They want to bring them in.
Which is really funny because the idea of giving free inference to open source people, I don't take credit for much, because especially this, because like it's such an obvious thing, but I flamed so hard to make that one happen. I talked about it in a bunch of content, and I have enough inside info to say relatively confidently the reason Anthropic started doing this is because of me flaming them to do it. And obviously OpenAI saw the opportunity, immediately copied it, and has been much better about it, as is the way with OpenAI. They always do things second, and they always wait to see how to do them right and then listen and do them right. So yeah, that part's cool. So what the fuck have you actually put into this? Cool, you have a theme. What does your Pi do that my Claude Code and Codex doesn't that makes it better for you to code than my stuff?
Okay, so this is my shitty Mac Neo for this, my big 16 inches downstairs. But on my actual main computer, the main thing that I really like about Pi is the minimalism of it, because the more I've tested all of these things, and I think Codex is pretty good about this, we've slowly been realizing that less tools is better. This has been figured out for quite a while, but...
Says the MCP simp.
The way you do MCP right is by doing one MCP, like you give it one MCP that can like run TypeScript to call a bunch of different functions. That's a whole other rant for another time. But dumping 10,000 tools from MCP in is dog shit stupid. I am not advocating that at all. In fact, the reason why it's good is because it is so heavily built into just the exec command and letting the agent naturally use your computer the way you would use your computer. And it's great. It works really, really well. And I've been testing this going back and forth between Codex and Pi. The Codex is still my main because Pi is not currently supported in T3 code, and Codex is still a really good harness. I think the thing about Pi that is really interesting is the stuff you can build on top of it. So you're talking earlier about the agents SDK from Anthropic, the thing that is causing all this drama, the thing that you built into T3 code that is probably going to get shut down next week if I had to bet money. And Pi has a very similar system to that, just with a normal TypeScript SDK that will not even spin up a full coding agent instance, because when you spin up the Claude agent SDK, I believe, I haven't used it heavily. I know how OpenCode's work, but I'm not sure how theirs works. But I'm guessing what happens is it will read in all your Claude MD files, all your skills, all of the things as if you were running Claude code in that directory. That's the way OpenCode's work, where if you spin up their SDK, it's as if you are spinning up the OpenCode TUI in that space. So if you have a bunch of agent MD files in there, that's going to suddenly pollute the context. There's a bunch of extra stuff on top of it. That makes it really hard to build custom tools with these harnesses.
Does Pi not even read the agent MD?
Nope. It doesn't do anything out of the box, and I love it for that. All it does is it gives you a way to handle authentication. And if you're using the SDK, it doesn't even automatically do that. If you just you create a new agent in the Pi SDK, if you did that in OpenCode, it would read your auth config already on the machine, auto boot it, it would just kind of work. Pi doesn't do that. They give you the functions you can use to pass in the path to the auth.json file, which is how you authenticate with OpenAI Codex or any other API you want to use, but you have to do all of that manually. It's super fucking minimal. It's just like the Vercel's AI SDK stream text, but with better DX for actually building an agent.
Do you remember the question I asked that led to this tangent?
Yeah.
What was the question?
Wait, when you were asking how I got paid or?
No, when I asked about your Pi usage.
Oh, yeah.
What was the question?
Oh, yeah. What am I using? What am I building with Pi?
What have you customized? Like, what have you set up in this that makes you like using it more than other things? And you just told me all the things it doesn't do for like 10 plus minutes.
Yes.
What does it do? What have you made your Pi do that makes it better than the other harnesses?
No. See, this is the thing you don't understand. The things it doesn't do is how I was able to make the things that
So what the fuck are the things it does do?
So the things it does do is it allows you to build stuff on top of it. So one of the projects that I've done a ton of work on is BTCA. It's basically just like loading some random context from another place, like a Git repo or an NPM package or a website, giving that to the agent, telling it to search that to answer a question to get better information about how to use a thing. One of the best things you can do for the models is give them grounding in reality. And I rebuilt the entire thing around Pi's SDK and around even Pi's TUI, which we'll get to that in a second with the extensions. But because of how minimal the actual agent loop was, the original version was on OpenCode, and I was having tons of issues dealing with it, auto-reading an agent's MD file, and reading skills, and reading MCPs, and all this extra crap I didn't want it to do, so it massively degraded the agent's performance. Since Pi doesn't do any of that stuff, the natural agent is much better at just doing the thing I want it to. I define the tools, I define the things it does, and it's great. And then for the actual Pi TUI, the thing that you were asking about earlier, that has a really powerful thing they call the extension system, where you can make these Pi extensions, which is a TypeScript file with a special function with their types in it that gives you a bunch of hooks into the Pi lifecycle. So you do pi.onAgentStart, and then that'll give you a callback function where you can customize the system prompt, the available tools, the available MCPs, the available theme, whatever the hell you want to do with it. And I had a custom TUI setup that I built with OpenTUI for BTCA, which was fine, but it wasn't great. Like, I don't like maintaining a TUI. So what I was able to do is I was able to hijack the Pi coding agent TUI, which is supposed to be for a coding agent, and turn it into a research coding agent just with an extension. So if you boot up the Pi TUI with my extension in it, it'll overwrite everything, it'll change the tools, it'll change the system prompt, and it will suddenly become a BTCA instance with very, very little effort, and it's amazing.
But Ben,
yes,
Claude Code has skills and plugins.
Yeah, but Claude Code doesn't ship with the only skill that matters.
GStack?
Of course it's GStack. It's the only skill.
Could it be argued that there's a spectrum here, and on one side is Pi, and the other side is GStack?
Yeah, no. These two come together because you know what the one thing that Pi does support out of the box? It doesn't support MCPs. It doesn't have an LSP. It doesn't have a bunch of other random stuff, but you know what it does support? It supports skills so that we can put the most important skill into it, and it works beautifully.
Incredible.
I know. It's a wonderful piece of software because it works with GStack.
Pi coming to Y Combinator soon by the sounds of it?
I certainly hope so.
Pi Combinator?
Oh, you could do such an... I have horrible ideas. I'm not going to do them, but it would be really funny. Like, you could easily do the customizations because, like, you can hijack the TUI completely, like change the header, change the footer, change the way all of it actually looks and hijack it completely. You could make a GStack agent in Pi, and it's the right foundation to build it.
I've taken some risks on this first episode of our podcast already.
No shit.
I'm going to take one last one as we wrap things up here.
Okay.
Mario is the creator of Pi, right?
Yes.
He does not live out here, right?
No.
This part's for him.
Okay.
Hello, Mario. I know that SF is probably not your favorite place in the world, considering how much you actually appreciate things like minimalism and not being a pretentious asshole on Twitter. I can see why this is not your favorite city in the world. That said, there's a lot of things that are happening here that aren't great that we would love your help to fix. Those things include Y Combinator batches being told to use GStack for hours at a time during the batch. If you are interested, not only will I personally fund your trip out to SF, I will also fund, book, and organize an event where all of the current YC batch is welcome to attend for free, where you can explain to them why they are overusing skills and all of the other chaos and how much more they could actually ship if they were building on top of something minimal and not something absurd. Just no pressure. I want to be very clear. This is not, if anybody who isn't named Mario is watching this, stop, just skip over. This is for you, Mario. If you specifically are interested in doing something like this, let me know. I will fund it. I will cover it. I will organize it. I will put my team on it. We'll make it happen because I think it would be fun.
It would be very fun. And frankly, like, the thing that I really just wanted to talk about with Pi, with like that whole rant about minimalism and doing less, this is something I've really come around to over the last couple months, where like a great example of this is the LSP tool, where this was something that I really hated about Claude Code 4 months ago, but I really liked about OpenCode is the fact that there is an LSP integration built in so that whenever there's an LSP error, the OpenCode agent gets that LSP error directly in. Versus in Claude Code, that didn't happen. And the way I was using them at the time, that resulted in OpenCode giving me much better output because it would self-heal based on that. Pi very deliberately does not include an LSP plugin, and I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all because the thing that you realize over time is that by putting that LSP tool in there, it is very, very token hungry because that's what all of this is about. The problem with Claude Code's performance is the overloading of tokens in here. The actual core agent loop is not that complicated. It is a while loop and some tool calls. It's not crazy. You can figure out how all this works in less than an hour. The thing that's degrading the performance is the tens of thousands of tokens of crap that get dumped into there. And LSP reads end up becoming that because imagine the agent does its agent loop. It's a 5-step loop. On the first turn, it makes an edit to one TypeScript file, but it didn't make the edit to the other TypeScript file that is dependent upon that edit. So now you're going to get a bunch of type errors in there. And those type errors have now polluted the context of the agent right from that point. And that is naturally just going to make it stupider. The time to do the check for the LSP and stuff like that is with a normal lint command or a check command or whatever you want to do at the end of the generation. Let the agent do its thing, then run that thing.
But Ben, Opus has a 1 million token context window.
Oh, yes, and it never degrades.
GPT 5.4 only has a 250K context window. That means that Opus is 4 times better.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what that means. Like, because you see, in a hypothetical world, if you put more tokens into the agent, it would get stupider. But thankfully, we live in Anthropic's world. And in Anthropic's world, that doesn't happen.
More tokens is better.
Yeah, more tokens, more better. That's how this works.
Yeah. So before we overload the audience's context, we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming to the first episode of the Theo Ben Podcast News Network, TBPNN.
It's different lettering.
Yeah. Thank you. I
you.
don't know how we're supposed to end these things. I normally just say peace, nerds.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know.
I'm just going to...